A young guy was sharing one of the memorable moments in his parents' life. They were going to celebrate their 40th anniversary. And so he invited them to come over and stay at his house, where his wife and he were going to throw them a giant party for them and all of their friends. Everything was planned, but then the day of the party, they both came down with a really bad cold and they had to cancel the whole party. Well, they were disappointed, but it wasn't a serious illness. But the son said that evening he came down late and he heard some laughing in the kitchen and the tinkling of some glasses. And he realized it was his parents. And he listened as they talked and stuck his head around the corner and watched them looking into each other's eyes and wound together with their arms around each other. And then they clinked two glasses together, and she said, "Happy birthday, darling." And he said back to her, "Happy birthday to you." And they toasted each other with their cough medicine. What a touching moment. Now we come to the end of the book, but I think it's much more than the end of the book. I think it's the end of her life. For everything, there is a season. And here we're going to see what I think is her death. Now, there's a principle here, regardless of whether I'm right or wrong, and that is marriage is not forever. We often say, till death do you part. I think more accurately from the Bible would be as long as you both shall live. It is for this life only. Now, that seems a little sad, but really, I think it should make us value, treasure the time we have together even more. Now, as I mentioned, I think not everyone agrees that she dies in this, but I'm going to give you some reasons. And I really think as you look at these reasons, there are several good ones for taking this as her death. And when you put them all together, like strings coming together to form a rope, I think there's a strong argument that that's what's happening here. So I'm going to give you 7 reasons that this is the end of one of the greatest love stories ever written. Number 1, she is described as leaning on her lover. She doesn't seem to have strength to stand on her own. Now, here is the friend speaking. Who is this woman coming up from the desert, leaning on her lover? I want you to focus on this word, leaning on her lover. And I noticed this a little bit yesterday, and noticed that the friends are saying, who is this woman? They have been friends all the way through this book. They are kind of her people, her group, but somehow they don't recognize her. I think this is another indication something's wrong. And she can't stand on her own, is leaning on him. I think she doesn't seem to have the strength to stand on her own. Something's wrong. Now, there's a principle here that I think goes beyond that, in that there are times in a marriage when one partner needs to lean on the other partner. One of my favorite verses from the book of Ecclesiastes, and actually there are 4 principles here that about every other week I pray these for my marriage, that they'll be true of Janelle and me. Number 1, 9, 2 people are better than one. When 2 people work together, they get more work done. That's definitely true of Janelle and me, and I pray that. And number 2, which is really the focal point of this section, if one person falls, the other person can reach out to help. But those who are alone when they fall have no one to help them. This one has been especially meaningful in my marriage. Most of you know I'm almost completely blind, on my way to becoming blind. And Janelle, so many times, has helped me that sometimes I jokingly say she is my seeing eye wife. She drives, we walk hand in hand. She guides me around things, helps in so many ways. Also, my wife several years ago had surgery, brain surgery, because there was an aneurysm. And because of that, she has a little bit of short term memory loss still to this day. And what part of my job is once a week we sit down, I put everything on her calendar, on my calendar, and I make sure that she remembers on the day that it comes. We work with each other, we fill in the weaknesses of the other person. There's a couple of others that say, verse 11, if two people sleep together, they will be warm, but a person sleeping alone will not be warm. Now, I think this is true physically, especially remember, this is a desert culture going across the desert, but I think you could say it's true of emotional warmth, of physical warmth, of spiritual warmth. We need each other broadly, but I think this is especially true in marriage. And finally, an enemy might be able to defeat one person, but two people can stand back to back to defend each other. Now, in a marriage, there is a third person, God, and and three people are even stronger. They are like a rope that has three parts wrapped together. It is very hard to break. When you have a couple around Jesus Christ, you have an unbreakable team. In the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey gives an example of synergy. He says it's everywhere in nature. If you plant two plants close together, the roots grow together and improve the quality of the soil so that both plants will grow better than if they were separated. If you put two pieces of wood together, they will hold much more than the total weight held by each separately. Interesting, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. 1 plus 1 equals 3 or more. Wow. That's the principle we're seeing here. So let me go on to principle number 2, or reason number 2. He talks about birth and then compares love to death and the grave immediately after this. The woman actually is speaking, and back there I should have said she. I woke you under the apple tree where your mother gave birth to you and where you were born. Notice that allusion to birth, the beginning. Now, a few verses later, it says, keep me near like the seal you wear over your heart, like a signet ring you wear on your hand. Love is as strong as death. Passion is as strong as the grave. Its sparks become a flame, and it grows to become a great fire. This comparison from the beginning, birth, to death, right here in this section, coming from her, I think carries great significance. It changes the way they look at the relationship. I live in an area not too far from the Byron Nelson golf course, which is where the tournament occurs, very near us. And a tragedy happened one time at that tournament. A tree suddenly cracked and fell unexpectedly and killed one of the people watching the golf tournament. It was terrible and just suddenly happened. Now, Charles Cody was playing, and he was playing on that hole, the third hole of that golf course, and he went over and saw it immediately. And in an interview a few minutes later, he said, I tried to play golf, yet I had no desire to play after that. All of a sudden, those golf shots didn't seem important. Wow. I want to move to a third reason. There seems to be summary statements about the importance and power of love, particularly their love. Number one, the power of physical love, stated as strongly as anywhere in the book. She says, I woke you under the apple tree where your mother gave birth to you, where you were born. Now, again, I want to unwrap this, unpack it so you can kind of understand what's being said here. The apple tree, fruitfulness, nourishment, enjoyment. This has been used before in the book, and you can go back and look at that. And she goes on to say very directly, where your mother gave birth to you, where you were born. Now, she seems to be talking about the physical, the sexual relationship. She showed a desire for him physically. So she's talking about the enjoyment and the power of their physical relationship that she gave to him. And again, I want you to see here that this gives him a sense of fulfillment in their marriage. She has given that to him. She points that out here. But there's also here the power emotionally. She goes on to say, keep me near you like a seal you wear over your heart. It protects your heart. That's what I did. Like a signet ring you wear on your hands. When you have that signet ring, you use it as a stamp to say, this is my decision. I want to be the one who is partnering with you in decisions. Like love is as strong as death. Passion is as strong as the grave. Its sparks become a flame and it grows to become a great fire. Their love is passionate like a great fire. You see the power of it. Number 3 talks about the power spiritually. Now, there's some overlap because I think the spiritual includes the emotional, but this is the verse most often quoted in wedding ceremonies. She says, a flood cannot put out love. Rivers cannot drown love. Would people despise a man for giving everything he owns for love? He has given everything to her for this love. There is a union in them, and the power of this love has been worth it. Wow. I want to give you an example. Not too long ago, this is Jack Benny and his wife of 48 years, Mary. Jack Benny, from the 1940s to the 1970s, was an extremely famous, funny comedian and had a great relationship with his wife. He died in 1974. The day after his death, she received a flower from the florist. And then the next day, another flower. And then the next day, another flower. By the way, they were all roses. And when that happened, finally, she called the florist and asked why. And he said to her, before Jack died, he came by to order some flowers. As he was leaving, he turned back and said, if anything should happen to me, I want you to send Mary a single rose every day. And so he made a provision in his will to be able to pay for those roses for the rest of her life. That was a love that went beyond death. That was a love that had strength and meaning. Number 4, she seems to be putting her affairs in order, giving counsel to her friends, giving to her husband what she has. Let me first start with her friends and her counsel. Now, the friends come to her with a situation. We have a little sister, and her breasts are not yet grown. What should we do for our sister when a man comes asking to marry her? If she were a wall, we would put silver trim around her. If she were a door, we would put a cedar board around her. So they're asking what to do to prepare her for marriage because she's young. A little sister, breast not yet formed, she's still very young. A wall, she needs protection. Build towers, watch over her. The tower was designed to see who's coming in, watch. A door, she is morally weak. You need to be her strength. And finally, they enclose that door to protect her. So they're asking, what should they do? The woman says this: I am a wall, and my breasts are like my towers, and he is satisfied with me. Again, let me unpack it for you. I am a wall. That is, I am morally strong. My breasts are like towers. Again, remember, the tower is where you look over, decide who's going to come in. And she is one who knows who to let in and who to keep out. And notice she says, he is satisfied. In other words, my love brings contentment to him. I think if you were going to put this in principle form, she would be saying it's worth waiting. It's worth getting the right person. It's worth being careful. The second one is she gives her husband what she has, her property. Now, listen to this. This, to many people, is very confusing, but I think when you break it down, it makes good sense. The woman speaking and says to Solomon, Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Haman. He put men in charge of the vineyard. Each man brought in grapes worth 1,000 shekels of silver. Now, Solomon, you can keep your 1,000 shekels. Give 200 shekels to each man for the grapes he brought. But I will keep my own vineyard. Now, she goes on to say, my very own vineyard is at my disposal. It belongs to me. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon. The 200 are for those who take care of its fruit. Now, this can be a little confusing, so let me again unpack it. Solomon's field, he has a vineyard at Baal Haman. This is an unknown location. We have no idea where this is. He rents his vineyards. She owns her vineyards. He rents it for 1,000 shekels of silver. Remember that because it's going to be important. Rent is not applicable to her situation. She grows on it. She gives freely. She has 200 shekels to the workers. But the rest, the 1,000 shekels, go to Solomon. She is paying Solomon. Now, again, let me kind of put this in perspective. He doesn't need the money. This is Solomon. He has, if you figured up, over $1 billion in gold coming in a year, just gold. This shows him great respect. She wants to give to him. The money doesn't mean much, but the respect would have been incredibly important. She initiates quality time with her husband. She wants her last days with him. Now, we come to the end of the book, and I want you to notice his final request and her final request. First, the man, Solomon. There you are, sitting in the garden. Friends are listening to your voice. Let me hear it too. Solomon, in the garden. Now, this is love relationships that they have as they share together. Solomon is there, but her friends are also there. And she is giving public testimony to them. She is sharing, giving counsel, sharing with them. And he says, I want to hear too. I want to be a part of this, to hear your voice. What he's saying is, I desire to be close to you. He's showing how special she is and generous because he's willing to share her with them. But then she says in the last verse of the book, hurry, my lover, be like a gazelle or a young deer on the mountains of spice. Now, again, hurry, my lover. Time alone. It's urgent. Like a gazelle or a deer now. And then on the mountains to be alone, up in the mountainside to be alone, just the two of them. We've seen that before. She wants quality time with him. That's extremely important in their relationship. I want to give a few more reasons outside of the book. Number 6, the absence of a woman like this anywhere in the life of Solomon as recorded in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles. Now, it seems fairly clear if you take this book at face value and what it says that Solomon is the one who wrote this book. But you don't see her anywhere. Now, it's very difficult to prove something in the negative. It's not there. But it seems like if she was there, you would see a record of her. And this book happens early in their relationship. So it seems logical that she would have died early, young. And number 7, women were Solomon's downfall. Now, this is my theory, so take it for what it's worth. My theory is that he was searching for another woman like this. Now, 1 Kings 11, 1 through 6 tells about his downfall with women. So I just want to read it. King Solomon loved many foreign women, including the daughter of Pharaoh and women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and the Hittites. Now, the problem wasn't that they were from other countries. Listen to what he says. In the past, the Lord had said to the Israelites, you must not marry people from other nations. If you do, they will cause you to follow their gods. That's the problem, drawing them away from God. But Solomon fell in love with these women. By the way, this is why God says, don't be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. He had 700 wives who were the daughters of leaders from other nations. He also had 300 slave wives, usually called by the word concubines. That is, they weren't legal heirs, but there were women he married. By the way, not always slave women, who were like wives to him. His wives caused him to turn away from God. And then he concludes this way, when Solomon was old, his wives caused him to follow other gods. So he did not follow the Lord completely as his father David did. Solomon worshiped Ashtoreth, the goddess of Sidon, and Milcom, the horrible god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did what the Lord said was wrong. He did not follow the Lord completely as his father David did. He seemed to be looking for that perfect love relationship. As we come in for a landing and end our course, I want to give you a 30-day test or challenge. I want you to write down the principles, review them daily, pick one, and put one into practice every day. Pray for God to empower you and guide you in putting this into practice. And pray God will transform your marriage step by step, principle by principle. Now, I want to go through the key lessons. Number 1, make deposits into your partner's life often. Not a once and done kind of thing, but often. Number 2, meet key needs. Now, husbands, according to this book, running like threads through the whole book, is that she needs to feel safe and special. Women, he needs to feel respected and desired, physically desired. Now, for me, the first one of those, making my wife Janelle feel safe, is always a little challenging. And I've worked on trying to do that, to make her feel safe. And I told you about locking the door becoming my job. I've recently become aware of a fear she has, and I'm working on that. And special. One book I would recommend in this regard is a book by Gary Smalley called Love Languages. I have discovered my wife's number one love language is service. I tried to do service, but I failed miserably. I'm not a very neat person, and not seeing well makes it very difficult. And my wife is very neat, wanting everything to be clean and in its place. But I did discover that she loves to have her feet rubbed. And when I rub her feet, she feels good and loved. And I can serve her in that way. Also, her second love language is gifts. And I don't have much money, but what I can do is give her simple gifts, sometimes a date, going out to see a movie, but something I can do, even if it's just a walk through a park, to show her she is special. I think doing this on a regular basis is very helpful. Fighting. This is 25% plus of the book. Face the problems. Take initiative. If there's a problem, talk to your partner about it and take responsibility, not for what they did, but for what you did. Admit failure. Forgive. Recommit. And renew your efforts of those first two principles. Number 4, the growing phase. Share your needs with your partner. Now, that was a part of their maturing love. Not only did they meet the needs of their partner, but they were willing to share the needs they had. And you saw their relationship mature, an incredible relationship. I want to close this time by sharing a story that has been incredibly meaningful for me. To be honest, I have trouble getting through this story. So as a case of emergency, I have it recorded so I can play it for you if I need to, but I'm going to try to read it for you live. Oh, excuse me. This is the review. Write down the principles, review them daily, put one into practice a day, pray for God to empower you and guide you. Pray God will transform your marriage. My grandparents were married for over 50 years. They played a special game that lasted their whole relationship. The goal of the game was to write the word Shimley in a place the other would find it. When discovered, it was their turn to hide it. They wrote Shimley with their fingers in the sugar and flour bowls to wait for whoever prepared the next meal. They wrote it in the moisture on the window looking out on the patio where my grandma would feed us homemade pudding colored blue. Shimley was written in the steam left on the mirror after a hot shower, where it would reappear regularly. At one point, my grandmother even unrolled an entire roll of toilet paper to leave Shimley on the very last sheet. There was no end to the places Shimley would appear. Little notes with Shimley, hurriedly written, were found on car seats or taped to steering wheels. The notes were stuffed into shoes or left under pillows. Shimley was written in the dust upon the tables and traced in the ashes of the fireplace. The word Shimley was as much a part of my grandparents' house as the furniture. It took me a long time before I was able to fully appreciate my grandparents' game. My heart sometimes doubts pure and enduring love. However, I never doubted my grandparents' love. They lived love. It was more than a game, it was a way of life. Their relationship had devotion, passion, and affection. You could see it every day. Grandma and Grandpa held hands every chance they had. They stole kisses and they bumped into each other in the tiny kitchen. They finished each other's sentences, shared the newspaper, and read books together. My grandma whispered to me about how cute my grandpa was and how handsome the old man he had grown to be. She boasted that she really knew how to pick them. Before every meal, they prayed, thanking God for their blessing, the family, and each other. One day, a dark cloud came into my grandparents' life. My grandmother had breast cancer. The disease had first appeared 10 years earlier. Grandpa was with her every step. He painted the room yellow, yellow because of the way she would always be reminded of sunshine, even when she was too sick to go outside. Now the cancer was back, attacking her body. With the help of the cane and my grandfather's steady arm, they went to church every Sunday. But my grandmother grew steadily weaker. Finally, she could not leave the house. For a while, Grandpa would go to church alone, praying to God to watch over her. Then one day, what we dreaded happened. Grandma was gone. Shimley was written everywhere at the funeral. It was written in big yellow letters on pink ribbons of flowers sent to honor my grandmother. Finally, everyone except family left. My grandpa stepped up to my grandmother's casket to say goodbye one last time, his voice shaking. He began to sing to her. Through his tears, the song came. I will never forget that moment, for I knew then that although I couldn't begin to fully understand their love, I had been privileged to see real love in all its beauty. Now, for the first time, I fully understood Shimley. Shmily. See how much I love you. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you that not only did you create marriage to be the most intimate relationship we will ever experience, but that you also gave us the principles that we can follow to build the kind of love you designed us to have, not only for us, but for our children, for our grandchildren, for the world to see the kind of love that can be reflected in a relationship designed by you. So powerful that you used it as a symbol of your love for the church and the church's willingness to give itself to you. We thank you for that. Give us wisdom in applying it to our life. In Jesus' name, amen.